All right, guys. Today I have with me the wonderful Mr. Chad Gherlt. I've known him for many years, and not only is he a great businessman, but he's a great man in general. Chad is the owner operator of Chick-fil-A in Yukon, Oklahoma, and his wife also runs business. So this is a topic that he is extremely familiar with. And Chad, I just want to say thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Marcus. Nice to visit with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So we can go ahead and get started with a few of these questions. And um, Chad, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my name's Chad. My wife's name is Erin. So we live in Mustang, Oklahoma. We're just kind of out in the country, just west of Mustang, Oklahoma. Um, we've got 6 kids. 2 of them are out of the house. We've got 4 at home. And so our youngest is 6, and our oldest is 21. We have 18-year-old daughter who's in college and at Boyce College in Louisville, Kentucky. So she's far from home, but the rest of them are close. And like I said, I own a Chick-fil-A franchise in Yukon, which is the west side of Oklahoma City. And yeah, we've had that restaurant. I've been with Chick-fil-A for about 16 years. Yeah, a little over 16 years. I worked at a Chick-fil-A in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for about 3 years, learning the business. I essentially had no restaurant experience at that time, and so I wanted to have my own franchise, but I knew there was no way that Chick-fil-A would go into business with me at that time. And so I worked for a guy for a few years to learn the business, a guy named Wayne Hassler, who was incredibly helpful to me. Then I ran a store in Pennsylvania, a company-owned store. And Chick-fil-A franchises every store, but there's a few company-owned stores, and I can explain that. I don't necessarily want to get into that, but I ran a company-owned store in Pennsylvania for about 6 months, and then had an opportunity in Oklahoma City at the Crossroads Mall. The Crossroads Mall was around for 30 some odd years, and I was the last operator there. The business, the mall. If you're from Oklahoma City, you know about the Crossroads Mall. The Crossroads Mall has just died, and so I was the last Chick-fil-A franchisee there. We shut it down the restaurant actually closed in 2010. It turned into one of those company-owned stores the last several months. But I left there in 2009 and opened up our franchise here in Yukon in November of 2009. And so here we are now in March of 2021. And so, been open for 11, a little over 11 years now. So yeah, things going great.
that's awesome. It's great news to hear. So we know that there are people who get into business, and for some people it goes extremely well. For some people it does not. What do you believe played a role in the success that you've had?
That's a really broad question. And so I'll kind of, I guess I'll speak a little bit broadly. So Chick-fil-A, there's not a lot of poor performing Chick-fil-A restaurants. Anecdotally, you can just drive to any of them and you see the lines, and so something's going on there. So, but you talk about my success. I don't know if your question, when you say what played a role in your success, I don't know if you're talking about me personally or Chick-fil-A as a whole. I think it's connected. I think one of the wisest things that I did was partner with a brand and a company that has similar values to me. And so that was, it's not, hey, this is a good business opportunity, and I'm gonna have to compromise some of my values, or I'm gonna have to compromise some of what I think is, whatever, my conscience. I need to kind of push my conscience back a little bit because it's good money. There wasn't any of that. I'm totally bought in on the values of Chick-fil-A. I'm totally bought in on this business strategy, on what we're trying to do essentially. And I think that has helped me in my career with Chick-fil-A. And I think Chick-fil-A has done a really good job of having a balance between success today and success in the future. One of the things that they very much care about is long-term growth. We want to have business results, financial results today, but the measurement of success isn't just money. There's being a restaurant. If we make money but people are unsatisfied, well, we aren't really a restaurant. A restaurant is designed to restore people. They come, they eat our food, they leave, they feel refreshed, restored. And so you can be successful making money and not be successful at restoring people, And so I think Chick-fil-A's place in the market is saying we want to be we're a business that exists for picky people in a hurry. People who that's this idea of premium fast food. There's just not a lot of spots of that. It's either fast food or it's going to be a premium restaurant. Well, the idea of doing a premium food fast is, I think it's in the market. It's we found a pretty good little niche there, and it and I think that's been incredibly helpful. But as far as what helped me play a role in success, I think just tying in with a company that I can contribute to, that I can be a part of, is probably the single biggest thing that's played a role in my success. I don't know. That may be too broad of a question or too broad of an answer for you.
No, that was a great
Yeah.
example. You gave information on the establishment and personal, so I think you covered
Yeah.
it extremely well. So, did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Did you always, when you were younger,
Nope.
think, "Man, I want to own a business,
Nope.
start a business"?
No, that was a mysterious thing to me. This idea of entrepreneurship. When I was a kid, the idea of having an idea and selling it makes sense. I think it makes sense to everybody, right? But then when the rubber meets the road, as a kid and as a young man, that just sounded crazy to me. The idea of, okay, hey, I want to, let's say a restaurant for example, you say, okay, I want to have a restaurant. Okay, well, you understand the idea of making food and selling it, renting out a facility, hiring employees. Okay, that sounds simple enough. And I think that's why a lot of people do it. But so many restaurants fail. And as a kid, to me, what I couldn't wrap my mind around was getting over the hump of the expenses, where the revenue would be higher than the expenses. And then also I thought, okay, well, that's great. But then how do you create the policies? How do you have a policy manual? How do you, all the way to getting a business license, or, that whole world seemed out of reach to me, which is really funny to think about now. But no, I did not always want to be an entrepreneur. I just kind of, in my mind, I had it prescribed that I would get a job. I would either be working at a church as a pastor or minister in some way, or I would get a job working for a company doing something, and I would earn a paycheck. Because this whole entrepreneurship thing, that's for people who have something figured out that the rest of us mere mortals don't have figured out. So no, I did not want to be an entrepreneur, and it's just amazing how it just kind of, when you do the next thing and you see opportunity, you just overcome hurdles. I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurship is. But no, to make a short question long, no, I didn't want to be an entrepreneur.
I think you just said something extremely important, is that when you see an opportunity and you're heading in that direction and you take a hold of that, that sometimes leads you to the destination that you didn't even
Yeah,
know was available. So that's
yeah,
something
yeah,
very good
absolutely.
that I think my students can learn from.
Yeah.
So, what is the most difficult thing about being the owner of your establishment?
Well, there's several difficult things. There's several easy things too. If we're going to talk about just difficult versus easy, but I think one of the more difficult things is other people's expectations. I think I'll go in two kind of categories. One is other people's expectations, and then the other is setting expectations for people. So, one of the most rewarding things, which I think your next question is going to be along the lines of what's most rewarding, is regarding people as well. But one of the more difficult things is people have in their mind what a restaurant owner or manager or whatever should be like and do. And so this, I think one thing that I did not expect to have happen, and that I find is incredibly common, is that when you have a restaurant, you own a restaurant, and it probably is the same way for any kind of business ownership. There is expectation that people have of what you should do. So, for instance, when I opened my restaurant, I when I was at the mall, we had incredibly low volume. I mean, we were losing money. We were trying to save as much money as we could. We were losing money. So I worked quite a bit on the floor, meaning in a position. I served customers. I swept floors. I wiped off tables. I cooked fries myself to some degree. Not as much as our regular staff did, but there's a few times I even washed dishes. I mean, things like that. And that was just because we had a staff of 17, and when you have 6 people scheduled to work and 2 of them call in, okay, and all of a sudden you're going to have to work. And so I was there almost every day. It's just a big part of the business. Well, we had a few of those people come to the freestanding restaurant. And so their expectation was that's what I was going to be like. And what's really funny is when you go from a business that's doing $1,000 a day to one that's doing $10,000 a day or whatever, when you 10x your sales volume, well, then the role has to change as well. And so early on, when we had 50 employees, I was coming in early and I was staying late and I was working more hours than everybody else. Well, then there was several days in a row where I found a little bit of relief. And so I said, I'm going to come in later and I'm going to work on strategy. I'm going to work on vision casting. I'm going to work on setting expectations, on a marketing plan, on leading our leaders rather than actually, cleaning tables and taking orders and making drinks. It was funny because we had some of those employees who were from the mall that said, Chad, you came in late today. That was funny. I hadn't seen you this, there was one morning I came in, I think it's at 6:30. And I said, Chad, you're already here, because it had been, I think, a couple of weeks since I'd been in that early, and they were kind of making jokes like, do you actually still work here? And that's a real small thing, but if you have some self-confidence problems, it's funny what other people prescribe to you as what you should be doing. We're human beings. We have pride. We say, no, I want to work hard. I want to show them that I work hard. Well, if you get caught up in that type of stuff, you're going to be doing the wrong thing. I know plenty of restaurant owners who work incredibly hard and are struggling with their business. And, it's so, and this is, again, I'm just saying restaurants, but entrepreneurship, business in general, that's one thing you have to understand, and you understand, but one thing that people have to understand is what their expectation for what you should be doing should not be a derivative of all of what you actually end up doing. What you should be doing is working on growing your business. What you should be doing is developing systems, not worrying about whether they think you're working hard enough. And that is something that I'm happy to report to you. I don't really struggle with anymore because I've gotten over that. But it's funny because people who work in the restaurant, they may go a while without seeing me. And I used to struggle with, do the people think I'm working hard enough? Do they think that I think I'm too good for them? But that's something I think people don't talk about in the entrepreneurship world. They think, oh, I'm busting, I'm working hard. I get up at 6 a.m. I go home at 8 o'clock at night and, get my sleep, do it all over again the next day, as if there's bonus points for struggling. So yeah, hard work is a big part of what you have to do. But I think I feel like a lot of people work hard, so to speak, at the wrong things. And there's a story that I think lays this out. There is you talk about clearing a forest. You've got the workers who are actually have the axes that are chopping down the trees. You have the managers who are up at the top of the trees looking ahead saying, yes, this is the direction. These are the type of trees coming ahead and reporting back for the type of saws and axes that need to be made. And then you have above that, you have a man flying in a helicopter who's yelling down saying, you guys are cutting the wrong forest. And to which the managers and the team yell from the bottom, shut up, we're making great progress. And that's the whole point. Like, you can be making incredibly progress at doing the wrong thing. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurship is saying, I'm not going to do the wrong thing. I'm going to do the right thing. And that has to do with having a mission. So I think that's one of the most difficult things is, dealing with people thinking, oh, you think, how do I word this? Dealing with other people's thoughts about you.
Right. Their
And
opinions.
a lot of times that's not even true. It's what, it's I think they think this about me, so I'm going to do that. All of that one of the things that I've learned is nobody talks about that. And at the same time, most struggle with it. Most entrepreneurs really struggle with it.
I think what you just said is not only brilliant advice for business, but just life advice in general.
Yeah.
The expectations of someone else doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing the right thing. Sometimes
Yeah.
you can be meeting the expectation of someone else, but doing
Yeah.
the exact wrong thing. So I really appreciate that advice. And you're right, not very many people talk about that side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I said there's the other thing is this is people. One of the most difficult things about the role is hiring, selecting people. We just is today Tuesday? Yeah,
Yes.
just yesterday we had. I'm happy to say, the work environment. One of my roles, I feel like, at my business is guarding the boundaries of who works there, bringing in the right people, ushering out the wrong people, and who is right, and who is right, and who is wrong for the business has a lot of times has nothing to do with work ethic. Obviously, a lot of it does, but we over the years we've struggled a little bit with kind of some gossiping because we hire some younger folks, and I'm happy to report that has not been an issue the last several years to a certain degree. Yesterday, it finally makes up to me that we have some little bit of gossiping going on, and we ended up terminating one of our team members who I feel like does not understand, like, hey, this isn't that big a deal, but this is one of those things. Is the this isn't a court of law. You're not innocent until proven guilty. This is a business with consequences that has consequences with people's lives on the back end of it. If we have an environment that's not right, one that's revenue, that's business results. That's also this idea of, if we're a restaurant and it's a place where people come to feel renewed, we're putting that at risk, because if there's bitterness or bickering amongst the team, that translates straight to the customer. And so we can't mess around with that. Those type of things, I think, are some of the most difficult things. Disciplining employees, letting some of them go, promoting, demoting. I mean, that type of stuff. I think that's probably the second category of difficult things about. It's not necessarily about the job that I hold necessarily, but just about being a business owner.
Yes, sir. Well, we spoke a good bit about the difficult portions of what you
Yeah,
do and the
yeah,
titles that you hold. And on the flip side of that, you actually alluded to this. There's also some very rewarding things. So,
yeah.
would you mind just giving a little bit of information about the things that you consider to be rewarding?
Oh yeah. Well, so we've got about 90 employees right now, about 90 team members, 90 to 95, somewhere around there, team members.
During a pandemic, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
During a
yeah. Well,
pandemic.
last summer we had a little over 100. We're down to 90 something. I haven't counted much, whatever, but we somewhere between 90 and 95. And what's really cool is seeing their development and growth over the years. It's just so fun to get involved in some of their lives, and certainly I'm not involved in all of their lives. I would never even pretend that, but some of the leaders, to be involved in their lives and to see their personal development and growth. That's just fun, and it's fun to have business results. It's fun. It's fun when your sales grow over the course of time and your income grows. That's fun. That's fun. But I think it's also fun to understand where the business needs to go and to have people follow you. That's fun. That's rewarding. And yeah, that's one of the reasons to do what I do. It's fun.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Gherlt, you've been in business for, I believe you said it 17 years with Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, started in October of '04, so 16 and a half or so. Yeah, something like that.
So along that journey, have you made any mistakes? And if you have, how have you learned from those? And I see a laugh on your face because I know the answer. But
Yeah.
just for those people who have never been in your position, have you made mistakes and how did you learn from those?
Only one or two mistakes ever. That's all. Just one or two per day. No. Um, yeah. Uh, I guess we'll stick with the big mistakes, right? Not the ones that are recurring over and over again, but the ones that I've learned from. Um, so I think early on, some of my biggest mistakes were surrounding people and surrounding my lack of confidence. Um, yeah. So like I said, I had about 3 years of Chick-fil-A experience at, it was actually two different stores in the Arlington Grand Prairie area. So DFW. I had some experience there, and then I ran a low volume mall in Pennsylvania for 6 months, and then came to the Crossroads Mall, which was another, turned out it wasn't quite as low volume at first, and then died. So I went where I was trained and grew under a high volume situation, and then went to a low volume situation. And I ended up hiring a young lady who was incredibly helpful to me in that low volume situation. She came from another brand that she was wanting an opportunity somewhere else because the environment, whatever else, and I won't give names and all that stuff, but she came and was incredibly helpful to me in basically saying, here's how you run a low volume store. Here's how you staff. Here's how you manage and lead people. I was, my mind works towards growth, but towards controlling cost, man, I really struggle with that in a low volume situation. I thought, well, this is silly. How do you do this? And some of her stuff to help me was incredibly insightful. So she earned a lot of trust from me. So, but in that, we'll call it 6 months between the time that I hired her and I knew we were going to open a freestanding restaurant, and then we actually opened that, I saw a lot of problems, I guess, with her leadership style. Now, again, I want to give her a lot of credit. She, I won't tell her name or anything, but she helped me learn how to run a low volume store. Well, then we came to the freestander, and in the staffing and in the decision making and in the decision making process and in her lack of trust of some others, I knew there was something wrong there. I knew this is not going to be a fit long term. But I think I was paralyzed by my own fear, because here we are, having 17 employees. We're going to open up this business, and I'm going to have to hire 50 to 60 people. And I don't have any leadership except her and one other, who had just hired. I mean, I was nervous. I did not, essentially, I placated her. If that's even the right word, I allowed her to control my my line of thinking, um, and what's really stuck with me over the years was I knew the decision I need to make, and she had to go, and I could not make the decision because I was paralyzed with fear, because I was afraid, am I going to have to work 6 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. 6 days a week, which I'm not afraid of hard work, that's fine, but at some point, my family life's going to get messed up. Is the restaurant going to be dirty? Or we're going to have employees? I just was paralyzed with fear, which looking back now was silly. It's silly, because if you know the right thing to do and you don't do it, that's wrong. And so this young lady ended up causing all sorts of problems, and I ended up missing out on some other employees because they didn't want to work for her, wisely so. But my fear in making the hard decision was really paralyzing. And so how I recover and learn from that, I think, is what you said. I've learned that we're going to make decisions that are right, even whether they are going to have some consequences or not, because the long-term consequences are going to be way worse than the short-term consequences. Yeah. So that's some of the mistakes, or that's one real big one that I look back on with shame. I just let my fear control my line of thinking.
So I really appreciate your honesty. And what I've noticed, Mr. Gherlt, is some people see you in the position that you currently hold and feel like, those people are almost, perfect in their decision making and don't make
or even
mistakes.
think they're perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is that you can actually make some mistakes as long as you're learning from those things and overcoming them, and still be in a position of success, which is what you've done over the years. And that fear, what I've noticed in my students, some of my students have such a fear of making a bad decision that they won't even attempt to go down that path. So I appreciate you speaking a little bit about the things you've had to overcome. So now I'm going to transition into, I have students who, some of them have been in business or they work for different companies, and some of them have not. So in your setting, which employees do you see most successful? Or what type?
So what type of employee?
Yes,
So
sir.
it's really funny that so we have front of the house employees, so, or we'll say customer facing employees, and we have back of the house employees. So employees that won't necessarily interact with our guests. And there's a couple things. So with our front of house employees, or our customer facing employees, the ability to have eye contact and to smile and to speak enthusiastically, it's sort of a skill set that kind of has to be there in order for us to bring you on. And then the back of the house, it's a little bit different. If you're not great at customer interaction, that's fine. We still got room for you. But there's a few things. One is attitude. If somebody has an attitude of, this is a job for me, I'm just going to clock in, clock out, go home, do my thing, try not to get in trouble, that's not going to work out. It's just not. There's plenty of places that will employ you for that. This job is too hard to have an attitude like that, and it's too costly. It's too costly for everybody else that works there. So having an attitude of ownership and basically saying, yeah, I'm in, I want to be in part of the team. That's the most important thing. Literally just saying, hey, I'm in, I want to be here. Assuming you got the skill set, which is almost everybody does for something. Assuming you have the skill set, you got to have the attitude. Because I don't care what your skill level is. If you're saying, I don't like this job, I don't like it here, these people, you need to go work somewhere else. So attitude. The other thing would be aptitude does matter. Skill set does matter. It does not matter in the sense of, we will find a place for you. In the 12, 11 and a half years we've been open, or 11 whatever plus, I lose track. I can think of one person ever who had a good attitude that didn't have the skill set, where no matter where we put her, it just didn't work. I mean, one. and looking back, you're like, was her attitude that great, or was it that she only wants to do that? I don't know, but literally one that we've terminated because of aptitude. But aptitude does matter in regards to being able to be promoted or to being able to run certain positions. So the most successful employees have great attitude, great aptitude, and then availability. And availability, by the way, does not mean you're available to us every day that we're open. That is not what it means. Availability means you're gonna be bought into the business enough that you'll schedule your things around to where we can work with you. Because we have some students who work for us, college students that have busy lives. You got class this time? Absolutely. But we're a restaurant. We're busy on Friday night. We're busy on Saturday at lunchtime. We're busy in key periods. We don't eat lunch when customers eat lunch. 12 o'clock, all hands on deck. We've got some employees who said, here's my availability. It's from this day and this time, this day and this time. We say, okay, that's fine. We'll work it, but it's going to prevent you from being able to move into another position. Well, then they'll change their availability and they'll say, well, I'm available from here to here, but not here anymore. Like, whoa. You don't understand the difference between availability and a schedule, right? Like if you say, hey, I'm willing to work 25 to 30 hours a week. Well, we won't schedule you outside of that, but you don't get to pick when that is, right? So, and again, I'm not saying that if you have an outside life outside of Chick-fil-A, you can't, you're not going to be successful. Not at all. The availability thing means we're going to work with you. Please work with us. And so people who, and I think that goes back into the first thing of attitude of if you're bought in, and certainly, it's okay for somebody to say, hey, I want to have 2 nights a week where I'm home with my family. Totally get that. We can do that. But to say Tuesday and Thursday are the nights I'm home with my family, that's different than saying, hey, I've got 2 nights a week. I don't know if that makes sense. But attitude, aptitude, and availability, those are 3 big things. But I would go back to the attitude thing and say that's the big one. Because if you don't care about the success of the business, if you don't care about the experience of the customer, but you do care about your paycheck, it's going to be really hard to have success.
So you've spoken a little bit about this with the question that you just answered. So I asked you which which employees have the most success. And now the question is, which ones have the least success? And you spoke a little bit about those who don't have the right attitude. So could
Yeah.
you elaborate a little bit more on that, or if you want to throw something else?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing it's, to say the least amount of success, you almost have to define success, because there's a certain amount of care of you need to have a certain amount of, you want to be here in order to be eligible to be here, right? So my father-in-law used to be a school teacher and principal and superintendent. He's administrator. When he would hire teachers, he would tell them, you can be as good as you want to be. I'm not going to let you be bad. It's almost like the idea of must be this tall to ride the ride. You have to have a certain level of care, and so the least amount of success would go along to the attitude, or would, in my mind, would go along to the aptitude and availability side. We've got some people who have great attitudes, but they don't have a high skill set, or they got other things going on in their life. I can think of one young man who works for us who is awesome, but because of other things going on in his life, um, he's in the same position that he's been in the last 2 years, and that's great. That's and I think to say that's the least amount of success would be to put his life in a silo. It's not, because he's finding success in his life outside of Chick-fil-A. So he's only going to have a certain amount of success at Chick-fil-A because we love him. He's only available 10 hours a week and only on these particular days, and his pay reflects that. But hey, he's going to continue to work for us because his attitude is awesome and his skill set is good. And so that'd be the kind of thing you say in our business has the least amount of success. But as far as somebody causing problems, we don't play with that. If they cause problems, they can't work here. That's just all there is to it. Yeah. And so I think you say least success. If you want to have success in this, specifically this part of your life, you have to dedicate to that. And if you don't want to, that's okay. You're going to work, you're going to have some success, but it's not going to be the promotion type thing, because you got other things going in your life, and that's great. There's Tim Tasopoulos, who's the president of Chick-fil-A now. He's given a speech before talking about eagles. He says, you can hire. I'm probably going to misquote him, but you can hire pigeons or you can hire eagles. It says, well, the thing about eagles is eagles fly. They have other things in their life that they do, and so we accommodate for eagles. If you want somebody who's let's say a high school student or a college student who's or a college age student who's available anytime, every time. Well, there may be a reason that they're available all the time, every time, if they're not trying to make a career out of Chick-fil-A because they don't have anything going. Well, if somebody has something going in their life, they're working towards something, they also tend to be the best employees. And so we want to accommodate that. So, again, eagles fly, and why hire pigeons when you can hire eagles? Well, if you hire eagles, you have to treat them like eagles. You have to let them fly. You got to let them do their things. But at least success, I think that's different than what kind of employee fails. The kind of employee fails is the one that says, I don't care. Yeah, well, then we don't care either. See you later. But least success, that to me says there's employees who are going to work well there, who are going to have some success, but they're not going to hit the levels that some of the others do. And that to me goes to the other two, the availability and aptitude kind of skill set. Yeah.
Sounds great. And you spoke a little bit previously about culture and the way that your employees work together is a focus of yours when you're
Yeah.
hiring people. So, do you have any strategies that you use on the front end of that to help you decide if this is going to be a good fit, or if this person coming in for this interview would be a good fit for your establishment?
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. I think this is one of those topics that people want a magic pill. Hire an outside consulting company to bring in the right people, or have a certain type of interview or group interview or certain questions that you ask. And it just is not that simple. I think one way to look at it is the aim is not to hire the right person every time, because you'll just get froze and you'll never make a hiring decision, because you're always gonna miss somebody who would have been awesome, and you'll never know it. And you're always gonna hire somebody you think is gonna be awesome, and they end up being not, and you'll know that. So So I think that the aim is to be better at that. You're trying to hit a target. You're not always going to hit the bullseye, but you can, you can avoid missing way out here and way out here and way out here. So to be more accurate. So that's regarding a skill set specifically. So I mentioned eye contact, enthusiastic tone of voice. We call that the core four, and it's create eye contact, share a smile, speak enthusiastically, stay connected. So if we're going to try to do those, basically have our hired team members that do that for our guests, then we're looking for that specifically in the interview. Is this the kind of person who's making good eye contact with us? If they're kind of wondering and not smiling and monotone, well, you may say, well, they seem nice. I don't know why we wouldn't give them a chance, but they're not smiling at you. They're not speaking enthusiastically. Look, if they're not doing that in an interview, they're not going to do that with a customer. That's just all there is to it. So if you're looking for the back of the house, it's a little bit different. But if you're looking for the front of the house, that's specifically, you got to hit 3 out of 4, because we can teach you the 4th one if your attitude's right. So that's one thing. I think also we have entry-level position, 2 interviews from 2 different people every time. And then we call references every time. And that sounds silly. You're like, well, they're giving you the names of somebody to call a reference for. I mean, surely they're going to say something good. Well, a couple things. One, you'd be surprised, and you actually call those people and they say they're use me as a reference. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure they'd be fine. You can find red flags there, right? And it all kind of tells a story. Other times, the way that person talks, if you talk to them and they're completely unprofessional, you understand, oh, this is their buddy. They can't, like, here's the thing. If I'm going to hire you, surely you can find somebody who's somewhat well-spoken that's going to, stand up for you and say, yeah, you should hire this guy. Surely you're going to find somebody. So that's basic blocking and tackling. 2 interviews, 2 different employees, both agree, yes, we should bring this person on, offer position, call a reference. And then we do a 60-day probationary period where after 30 days, we're not always 100% accurate on this, but after 30 days, we give them some feedback. Here's what you should do better, or here's what you're going to have to do, the bare minimum in order to stay working here. And after 60 days, if they don't fit, they're free to go without being terminated. They left in good standing. It's just not a good fit type of thing. So the principles are do your basic blocking and tackling. Don't assume they're going to be good, and then be quick to let them go. And that sounds crazy, but if you're not quick to let people go, if you think, oh, I don't want to fire them, or I don't want to give them in trouble, man, all you're doing is you're putting your business in a bad spot. And I think you're going to lose your good employees. So there's no magic pill, but I think any service as far as getting your job posted will work fine. Whatever works for you, Facebook, Indeed, Snag a Job, whatever, get those out there if you need people. But it really has to do more than with pay. It has to do with whether, you have a reputation. And that brings me to my last thing is, have you ever read Good to Great by Jim Collins?
I have.
Okay. So he talks about the flywheel principle. The flywheel, he talks about if you wind a flywheel, they're heavy and it takes a while to get them going. And if 100 winds in, it may just barely be moving. If you stop right there, it's just going to stop. But if you get it going to where, imagine it's this big flywheel that eventually its own inertia and its own momentum is getting it spinning on its own, then you can't hardly stop the thing. And all it takes to keep it going is every once in a while, give it a couple more spin, give it a couple more winds. And I mean, the whole thing just, woof, 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 it's just going. And I think that's the same way with environment, with your culture of your business. If you treat people well, you treat them with respect, you love them, you tell them the truth, and you have the right environment, they will recruit themselves. It's amazing when you have an ideal employee. This is an ambassador for our business. Their friends want to come work there too, and that's the kind of people you want. So I think it's a long-term game. You can't hire out of desperation. Like, oh, that sounds good, but man, we need people today. Well, here's the thing: just work harder today, but find people that are the right people. Don't worry about the wrong people. That's a big thing.
So, Mr. Gherlt, honestly, I've spoken to you over the years, and I really enjoy speaking with you because you give so much in-depth information. There are many people that I speak with, and it's kind of like surface. It's like meeting somebody at a store, and you ask them the politeness, and you get your cordial stuff out of the way and skimming the surface. but you tend to go in depth, in detail with things that are going to be beneficial, not only for people just now getting into the workforce, but people who have been in for years. So I really do genuinely appreciate all the information you
Thanks.
gave me today.
AKA long-winded.
No, 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 no.
No, yeah,
This is in a good way.
yeah, good.
All the information you've spoken about is amazing. That's going to lead me to my next question. You've been in the business for many, many years. You've seen greatness. You've seen people who are mediocre. You've seen people who are just flat out bad. Do you have any pet peeves when you are in the process of hiring someone, or they've been hired and they are in a position, and you
Yeah,
start to say, well, this is just not going to work?
yeah. So people who apply for a job at our business at lunchtime. We're Here's the thing. We're a restaurant. We're trying to get the people served. They're like, can I have an application? You can. You might want to come back when we're not slammed, and we can actually visit with you. Asking for a pen. Can I have a pen? Dressed, not dressed. I mean, like, make an effort. I think that's, as far as in the application process, some of those things, it's like, man, you just never thought this through, have you? Or you have to put yourself in the shoes of, just, if you want to be a successful business, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the customer. What's their whole experience? And it doesn't matter the industry. That's just period. Well, same thing. If you want to be an employee, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the employer. Another pet peeve would be for employees that we do have, just not caring. That really all is down. That's really all it is to it. And this is kind of a theme that's, I think talk to me, I talk about that a lot, but just when you don't care, it makes it hard to care. So I think that's some of my pet peeves. Yeah, that's a good question. I like that question.
Thank you. So, Mr. Gherlt, this is going to basically conclude the questions that I had that I thought would be beneficial for our class and the direction that we're going. Again, like I said before, I've spoken to you on many different occasions. I've seen you in giving speeches in different areas,
Sure.
and there are a lot of people who seek your advice, and I'm appreciative that you're willing to give that to our class. So, at this
My
time,
pleasure. Yeah.
if you have anything that you would like to say to the students that you feel like that might be beneficial for them, I'm just going to leave the floor open to you.
Yeah. I think, I think the if it's any just open-ended advice, it would be this: don't compare yourself to other people. I mean, that's all I can say, and I give some. That's all. I think contentment is different than complacency. We talk about avoiding complacency. Well, along with that, sometimes comes greed, coveting other people's what they stuff, what they have, their position, their whatever you want to call it. So learn to be content without being complacent. And a story of that would be, let's say you're a kid and you come in, you were outside, you've been playing, and you come in and your mom says, "Hey, do you want a cookie?" And you say, "I'd love a cookie." And you get a cookie, and it's just a big chocolate chip cookie, which is the best cookie. We can have conversations about that, but chocolate chip is the best cookie. Basic, it's the basic. You're eating your cookie. Your little sister comes in and says, and mom goes, "Hey, you want a couple of cookies?" And she says, "Yes." And so she gives 2 cookies, and you say, can I have 2 cookies?" And your mom goes, "Oh, that was the last one." All of a sudden, what happened in your situation? What changed? Nothing, except for you started comparing yourself to somebody else. That's the only thing. You were sitting there, you came in, you got a cookie. It's delicious. It's fantastic. But now your contentment is gone because you compared yourself to somebody else. I think that is a silly little story. That is how the world works. And in fact, the Bible in the New Testament, there's a part of the Bible where Paul wrote a letter to the Philippians, and it's quoted all the time. It says, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." And so when you read the Bible, you have to read it in context because that matters. So that type of verse, I can do all things, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. If you just read that alone, it sounds like I can win the big game, or I can get the promotion, or I can get the second cookie, or whatever it is. The context of that is actually, Paul has just explained how he has been in shipwrecked, he has been under torture, he has been stoned and flogged and had all these things. And he says, I know what it's like to have nothing. And then he says, also, I've been wealthy and I know what it's like to have something in all these things. And he says, I know what it is to be content. I can do all these things. And so the context for all these things is poverty and riches. That's the context. And I can be content. And I think that is the most important thing, not just for entrepreneurship, not just for the world, that's for your life. Is Paul would rather be, he'd rather be sitting wealthy with food than be shipwrecked, flogged for his faith, all those type of things. But he says, but no matter what, because of the power of Christ in me, I can be content in either one of these situations. That's the context of Philippians 4:13. And I think that's the context for success in life. It's not about making money. It's not about having your own business. My wife and I talk all the time, like we could live in an itty bitty house, which our house isn't huge, but we could be in an
I've
itty
seen your
bitty
house.
house.
It's big enough.
Well, it's, but yeah, when we got 6 kids, you got to have some room, right? But we talked to all the time about we could live in a little bitty RV. We'd be just as happy as we are right now. Now it's more convenient to have something, a little bit space, and we got some land to run on. It's a lot of fun, but you can't ever compare yourself to other people. And I think, contentment without complacency, that's the magic sauce right there.
So honestly, Mr. Gherlt, I can't think of a better way to finish up an interview. If my students didn't hear anything that you said before, which I'm hoping that they will, because like I said, there's wisdom and there's knowledge, and I feel like you relayed wisdom today. But not being in a position where you're comparing yourself to someone else's success or their life or what they've done is a beautiful way to end this interview. So again, I appreciate everything you said. Obviously, I respect you a lot and your family, and I thank you
too,
for the
Mark.
information.
Yes, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you.
You have a good one, Mr. Gherlt.
You too. We'll see you.